Um, my name is Dov Meisels. My professional background, I'm the Director of Sales at Questrade of over 16 years in financial services experience and growing and managing large sales teams. And this session was really exciting to me. Specifically, I get approached a lot by young students and folks just entering the workplace about how to grow their career. Do they start their own company? Do they do a mix of both? And I think we got some really nice talent here today to talk about this and give some advice. So just to start off, I'd just like to ask the panel if you can just introduce yourself and provide your professional background.
My name is Daniel Bitton. I am the CEO of EcoMelt. EcoMelt is an aluminum recycling company. We recycle aluminum rims for the automotive industry. I'm a CPA by profession.
I'm Harley Gold. I'm with a company called Peak Hill Capital. We've about 60 employees in Canada and the US, and we're an investment manager in the commercial real estate space. I'm also chairman of Lighthouse Credit Union, which started a couple years ago, and which is a Jewish credit union to serve the community. And I've been in financial services for about 25 years.
Hi, my name is Dr. Menachem Foyer. I am the co-founder and president of Adelig IT. We have been training over 6.5 years. We've been training people in Jewish communities in the United States and Canada in full stack development, IT, data science, and machine learning. We run programs and we place people in jobs in the tech sector.
All right, thank you. I'd like to start the discussion today by asking a question that each panelist will answer. And I know everybody knows a lot. You got to go to school, or the traditional wisdom is you got to go to school, get a degree, or what have you. But I think when I look at a lot of resumes, what speaks louder is often the experience. And I want to ask the panel, whether you're looking to pursue a career in the corporate world or start your own business, why is it important to have that experience, and how do you go about getting that experience? We'll start with you, Danny.
So I'm going to say that there's soft skills and hard skills. Hard skills are going to get you the job. Soft skills are going to see you promoted and grow within a company. I think experience is probably the most important thing that you can get in a career, both business-wise and professionally. And it's something, every experience that you get stays with you and can move on. If you're going to transfer jobs, if you're going to move to a different division, different company, it'll always stay with you. Just want to give one little example about whether skills is more important than experience or not. Our corporate director of finance was a lady who took a bookkeeping course at Ryerson or one of the colleges, and grew with her persistence and her hard work, grew to be the corporate finance director in our company.
It's a great story.
So in financial services, in Toronto, you do have to go to university. I don't think that banks and insurance companies and so forth will necessarily hire without have gone to university, undergraduate, maybe even graduate to some degree, or work towards a CFA or other designations and so forth. Schools do matter. I hired over 55 people over the last 2 years, and it is a question that I do ask what school they went to. Not necessarily coming from the brightest schools, but the reasons of why they went to the school. Did they go to the school for social reasons or friends, or maybe something particular they were looking at, or did they play sports, or whatever the case is being. So, people do look for well-rounded people for sure in financial services, whether it's on the sales side, the analytical side, but having that formal education, unfortunately in Toronto, is kind of a must. I think in the US you can get away with it a lot more, but in Toronto it's very traditional that people have to figure out a way to work through that.
Okay, it's a great question. I think we're in a skills-based economy right now, and I actually am a university professor. I teach at university as well, and one of the things that I found over the 6.5 years is that companies are looking for people who have skills, especially in tech. You don't have to go to University of Toronto or some other university and get a bachelor's degree in computer science anymore. You could actually, there are a lot of boot camps out there. There are a lot of programs that are out there to train people, and I think it's important that there are programs out there that can train people, can mentor them, and give them job experiences and projects and stuff. And when you come to a company with that kind of stuff, I think it's very valuable, and we're going to continue doing that. And what I like about H3 is you can work together with a network like this, and you could say, okay, let's do some project work for this company or for this company, and you could build up that kind of experience with your tech skills and then move that on. Like for instance, in Israel, something we're modeling, a delegate in our new charity project, Community Tech, which we're going to be basing here in Toronto, is this idea in Israel. They have a thing called Avratech and Ravtech. Avratech, it's changed names to JBH, it changed names, but Avratech, the idea is it's a kollel, and it's software development they learn for a full year. First they do mathematics, because a lot of the people in the kollel don't know math, so they teach them math for a few months, and then they do software development, and at the end of the program, they go into a company, a private company called Ravtech. And Ravtech takes those people in that program and gives them skills and gives them work experience and helps them build up their resume, and they go on from there to companies like Microsoft and Facebook, or they stay on, and it's a constantly cycling thing. It's like a holding tank to take that experience, to employ it, and then to move on, and we'd like to do something like that here in this community.
Yeah, just to add, I find a lot, at least when I was in school, there was no internship or co-op program. I think what you're seeing a lot nowadays in the schools is they offer and they have that nice mix of co-op. So by the time you graduate, you also have that work experience and hopefully a network or a small network that you can start to explore.
Exactly.
The next question I want to direct to Harley. We see a lot of young people today, millennials, next generation as well. People think or have that mindset that I should be progressing very quickly. 6 months in on my job, why aren't I being promoted? And that mindset can quickly lead potentially to the negative side where that employee can become sour. What advice would you give to folks entering the workforce, properly managing expectations on what they should do to get that promotion, and take it from there?
Yeah, so great question. So certainly when I'm looking at hiring somebody and you look at their resume, if they were sort of a year here, a year there, or they've been at 3 or 4 jobs within the past 5 years, sometimes their answer may be, well, I outgrew this role, I outgrew this and outgrew this. I've had a hard time hiring those people, and I won't hire those people because it shows that maybe they don't know what they want, and they haven't really flexed their muscles and worked hard at that role or growing within that organization and having that loyalty, right? So obviously when I hire somebody, I look at their credibility, I look at the honesty, I look at a person, do I trust this person? Financial services is all about trust. So you have to hire somebody that you trust, someone's gonna be loyal, someone's gonna work hard, someone's gonna put the time and energy in and so forth. And so obviously the younger generation today, there's this thought where, okay, maybe it's better I hop around, or I'm gonna outgrow this role, or I wanna move up really, really quickly, and I think that's the wrong approach. I think that people have to put the time in. I think there's so much to learn. In my business on the real estate investment side, I basically say to someone, you don't move up until you work on 1,000 deals. That's it. You work on 1,000 deals, then you sort of got to the next level. Then at that level, then you sort of move this and this. And so I think there's got to be patience from people. I know, we're all very entrepreneurial, and entrepreneurialism is great. There's nothing, we should be encouraging that. And there's lots of ways to learn and contribute within an organization, even corporately within a large organization. There's lots of things to be involved in and help and grow within a role patiently. And I think having that patience within larger organizations will really, really pay off down the road. To get to that executive role, you got to work for 7 or 8 years or 10 years or 15 years. And I think Toronto's very unique that we're really the headquarters of headquarters. Every major company in the world has a headquarters here because they're basically either in Toronto or Montreal, and that's it. So, you drive around the airport here, you see all these multinational signs, they're all here. And so within, I've always sort of encouraged people that there's amazing opportunities, even in the from world. There's not a lot of from people or even Jewish people at the high levels of companies in Canada. With the big corporate companies, I think there's opportunities for people that they can grow in such companies, and even multinational potentially as well beyond Canada. So,
Yeah, there's definitely something about getting those battle scars, going through the trenches, really experiencing the highs and the lows of business. So by the time that next opportunity comes around, you have that resume of experience to demonstrate your abilities. I want to direct the next question to Menachem. For somebody who's finishing school, actively looking for a job in the workplace, what are the technical skills nowadays that folks need to focus on and develop?
It's a great question. I think we're in a digital world right now, so it's essential to have digital skills. So you have to know. So a lot of people in the firm world aren't familiar. Like we've run classes where people don't even know how to use a computer, what a computer is. I mean, you these are really important skills about how to use a computer. Coding is a very important skill, working with data, Excel, all these things that a lot of companies work with. You have to know how to do that data processing, working with code, working with different platforms. Those are really important skills. But I think a very important skill to bring this is it's very interesting today, like communication skills. People don't really recognize how important it is to be a good communicator. So it's not just that you have technical skills, but you're able to listen and communicate with the people you're working with, and able to deliver. And if you can't understand what they're saying, you're not really listening. You can't really deliver. So it's also important on the other side is being able to speak to articulate yourself very well. Communication skills are essential, and in the kind of programs, even though we run technical programs, I think it's one of the most important parts at the end of our program is the capstone project when they have to present to companies, and it's important to work together with our students to say, okay, now you're presenting to a company. How do you communicate what you have to them? Don't just show them what you've done, but pitch it to them, sell it to them, and that takes good communication skills.
Just to add on communication skills, when I interview people, they can have the most impressive resume, but if they can't communicate to me why they're fit for the job, or they can't talk and articulate the experiences that they have and how that would apply to the job, even if they are qualified, it's going to be very difficult to hire that person.
Absolutely.
Switching gears, we talked a little bit about folks entering corporate America. I want to talk about maybe somebody starting their own business. This question is directed for Danny. Anyone looking to start their own business, what are some of the challenges they may encounter in their first couple of years? What advice would you give them to oversee those challenges?
So I would say that the most dramatic challenge that one faces when starting a business is meeting cash flow, managing cash flow, and having enough cash flow for the cash burn. So to look back, I would say make sure that you build a business plan, but the business plan must be honest. You got to make sure that you've built in the pitfalls and the downs. And then when you're going to go raise cash, don't be conservative, because you'll always run into something that's going to need more cash. And when you're doing your first cash, it's always your lowest cost raise. So that's the experience that I've had. I can get into some anecdotes, but I'll leave it for later.
Okay. Let's switch to a question for everybody on the panel. How important is it to find a career that provides a proper work-life balance? We'll start with Menachem.
I think that's a great question. I mean, because a lot of people want to have a good work-life balance. It's an ideal, but when you start off, you may not get that. You're not going to get that. It's like a little bit it's a tall order. So in the beginning, I'd say when you have to put your head down, you got to work really hard, and you may not, sadly, if you have children, you may not see them as much as you would like to see them. But we're living in a remote world today. A lot of companies have hire people remotely, and there's a lot of project work. So there is a lot of room in that scenario for work-life balance, I think. But other than that, if you're going to a corporate headquarters and you have to show face and you have to do work, there might be hours you may not have that time for your family and whatnot. And it's very difficult from people. And a lot of people ask me when they take a program, can I do this at home? Can I do this there? These are great questions, and I think that can promote more of a work-life balance. But in general, starting off, you have to work very hard, and it's hard to to get ahead, whatever you are, to get cred.
Harley?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a bit of an advantage today for the front world, actually, because companies are a lot more understanding to flexibility today, more than ever. Vacation times are probably longer today than they've been historically. Work hours are more flexible. So I think working within any company today, there's a lot more flexibility in terms of maybe starting a little bit later in the day, finish working later, the hours being a little bit different. So I think companies are a lot more understanding, and if you're really good at what you do and you put the time and energy in, any manager is going to be understanding of that because they want you. Talent is hard to find today. Unemployment rate is low in Canada. And so if you're really good, they'll make it work for you. But that doesn't mean you take advantage of the situation. You really want to do a Kiddush Hashem, not a Chalul Hashem. You want to be the first person there in the morning. If you can be the first person there in the morning, I think that goes a long way. But I think the work-life balance today is probably better than it's ever been for us as a community, for sure.
That's true.
Yeah. Danny?
Yeah, I'll just add to what Menachem and Harley said, which is from a business perspective, not to get caught in the trap of being a business owner. Because as a business owner, you can work 24 hours a day and it'll never end. And you never, it can affect family life, it can affect that proper balance. And as from Jews, we need to take time off for our davening and our learning and everything else. And the family is so important. It's a means to raising our families. And I'll tell you, as a business owner, you really have to know how to turn it off and when to turn it off. Otherwise, you get into a trap.
Yeah, and especially when you talk about retaining talent today, and companies are so flexible as an employer, I find as well, if you're not willing to be that flexible, you're going to lose that top talent because somebody else out there is offering it. Maybe it's almost like what we heard this morning about that shul, right? No phones allowed. Sometimes you have to learn how to turn it off. The next question is for Harley. Somebody entering the workforce or starting out, how do you determine what industry or company to apply towards? And what advice will you have to give somebody to get their foot in that door?
I think people should focus on what they're passionate about and what their interests are. I think if you focus on that, you'll figure it out. And trying to spend some time figuring out what you're passionate and what you're interested is really what you start with. And if anybody, I've hired people outside the financial services industry. I hired an engineer recently who really has a passion for real estate now. Explained to why he was passionate about it. His family was in it, and this and that. And so his story resonated with me, and so I'm giving him a shot. And so he did sort of change industries or careers, but it started with a passion that he relayed to me to give him an opportunity to see how it goes. So that would be my advice.
Okay, fantastic. This next question is for Danny, and it's also about starting your career, but maybe not necessarily a white-collar job. And I think with all the supply chains moving back to North America, and you talk about the skills of the trades, where everything traditionally was produced and manufactured overseas. And I think in our discussion leading into this, we talked about there being a shortage in manufacturing or industrials. Can you talk a little bit about that demand, what that looks like? What do you think those skilled jobs with your hands, the demand is going to be in the next 5 to 10 years?
So I'm witnessing a tremendous onshoring into North America. What COVID taught multinationals was you couldn't rely on this world economy. You have to build local, you have to produce local, because you never know what the next geopolitical event is going to be that's going to cause a supply chain problem. And we have a plant in Atlanta and a plant in Houston, and it is almost impossible to find the proper talent today in the United States. The labor shortage for skilled workers, for welders, for electricians, for machine operators is tremendous. And what I'm seeing personally is these trades can now earn as much as our top professionals are earning. And there's a tremendous demand. It's a little bit of different type of work. It's harder work, yeah, for sure. It's, you're traveling, but it's a great opportunity for a lot of people. And I would recommend it to anyone who's interested in that skill. Are you seeing any from people going into those trades? Unfortunately, where I'm located, there aren't many from people, but I'm hearing that our people are going into the electrical field, and that is tremendous. Setting up a plant requires professional electricians with certifications, and they get paid a lot of money, and they are in high demand. So like I said, a good welder today, you can't even find a good welder and pay them enough to get the things done. That's what's going on in the United States. I don't see it so much in Canada yet, but I think it's coming here too. Okay, excellent advice. This next question is from Menachem, and it's a similar theme, maybe not so much as starting your career, but maybe advancing your career. And it has to do with finding a mentor to help you navigate with your career. It's probably maybe 5 or so years into my career before I even heard the term mentor, and I think a colleague of mine had paired with somebody and was really raving about it. And I don't know if I necessarily picked a mentor. I think sometimes you just stumble upon one. Maybe talk a little bit about the value in finding a mentor, somebody you can learn from, and how do you go about finding that person?
Absolutely. I think mentoring is essential, especially when you're coming into an industry. I find that people, like when they come and take our programs, they're like, They have no idea. They have fantasies about companies. They don't know what happens in companies. They don't know what it's going to be like, the corporate culture. It's like one of the things that I did to try to alleviate that was to create co-ops with companies where they're with people in the company. There are people there, and our teachers, when we teach our programs, are in the industry, and they could be mentors. So there's already mentoring going on within the program. So it's important to have that, and when you go into a company, if a company, one of the things the person should ask for, and a company should provide, is mentorship. They should have someone who should bring them into the company, because every company has a learning curve. So if you have expertise in software development or data science or what have you, and you go into a company, well, they're going to do things in their way, and they have their technological stack and things that they do. So hopefully they have a mentor that can help them with that learning curve, because if they don't, it's going to take a lot. It's going to cost them more money. It's going to cost them more time. So that's one of the things I would suggest when people are going to different companies, is to ask for mentorship if it's not provided for. It's like, I want to transition. I want to make this learning curve as short as possible, but I'd like to have somebody who has experience who could help me with that. I think it's essential.
Are you seeing, even when people are applying for roles, I think if you're talented, you have options.
Yes.
And do you see folks asking companies about that? Does your company offer mentorship programs? Should that be something that somebody considers when they're applying for a role in a company?
Yeah, I think there should be. I think our program should. I would like to offer. I know H3 wants to do more mentorship, and I think it's a very important skill, especially for people who are within the religious community or are moving into that. I think it's very important that we have more mentorship. And I know in the United States, I was a part of different programs for mentorship. I brought people who are mentors into the programs around the United States, and I think it's very fruitful. And there are a lot of from people, like on Slack. I'm in the Slack, software developers in Slack and data scientists in Slack, and there are tons of people who want to be mentors. We just need to give them the conduit, and I think that it's really important that we do that, because there's a lot of fear. People are like, what's it like out there? What happens when I get this year? This how many years in? Where do I do next? There's always these questions. And in Judaism, we have mentors. It's built into Judaism. And I think it should be built into the type of networks that we create within the Jewish community and transitioning into the workplace. I think it'd be a great idea. I think we should create a mentor network, and we need to what I love about H3 is you can bring all these different companies together, Jewish companies, and say, okay, let's work together in job creation and bringing people into these businesses, but also let's work with people who are within these companies or who have expertise, who could be mentors to these people, because there's a lot of fear. I mean, like, I have a son right now in yeshiva in Israel, and he hasn't worked before. What happens when someone who's a yeshiva bacher goes into the world? How do they transition? What do they know what to do? They don't know anything about that. They've been in school all their life. So I think it's essential, and I think that it's a service that we should provide as a community. I'd be happy to provide that with community tech. That's one of the things I would love to do, and then continue. We do it with the Deleg, and I would do a lot more of it. But it takes a lot of work, and it would take someone who's dedicated to create a mentor network. We need people who are dedicated to that. And I think it's essential to this community. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
This next question is for the entire panel, and Harley talked a bit about at the beginning, if someone's skipping around too frequently, that could be a red flag on a resume. But the question is, when do you decide it is time to start looking? I've been personally fortunate to be with Questrade for over 16 years, but I'm likely the exception to the rule. And I would tell people it's not wrong to look, but when is the right time? We'll start with Danny.
So I really should pass on this question because I've been in the same job for 30 plus years. So, but I would assume that if you're not being fulfilled through your job, you don't like what you're doing, I guess it's time to move. I go to work after 30 years and I still love, it's challenging. I love it. Every day there's something new. And so I'm going to pass it on to the rest of you.
Yeah, so PQL I started about 4.5 years ago. I was with a large company for about 12 years. And as a non-Jewish company, I was the only partner that was Jewish. And I think growth, when you don't feel there's growth anymore, and you feel that, so I was maybe a little bit more entrepreneurial than some of the other partners were. So that was kind of the reasons why I left. And they were kind of, slowing me down a bit at that point. But like I said, I put in the time, I put in the energy. It wasn't a quick decision to make. But so I'd say for myself personally, just, growth. If the growth isn't there, obviously, if you don't feel you're treated right or you're not valued, that you should be valued and so forth. But you got to give it some thought after working for a certain period of time and give it the patience and the time, not just 1 year at one place. It might have to be a few years at one place. You made that decision, commit to it, give it all that you can go, and then if the growth isn't there and so forth, then decide to potentially move on.
All great points. Growth is important. Happiness is important. If you're at a place and you're not happy what you're doing, it's an indicator. It's a red flag. What's going on is not working. Maybe at that point you should look within the company to see if there's any way to do something different, to advance in different levels, make suggestions, be proactive that way. But I also think impact is a big thing. I think if you feel like what you're doing has no impact, like you feel like you're in a closet or something and you're not affecting people, and that's a big thing. I think people want to know that what they're doing has a toilet, has like some kind of end out there that's beneficial to other people, and that's a very important thing in whatever you're doing. Some people like doing the backroom kind of thing, but I think most people don't. Most people want to do things that make them happy. They want to feel that they're growing and they're advancing, and I also think they want to feel like they have an impact as well.
Okay, thank you. This next question is for Harley. And you had mentioned in your previous work, you were the only Jew there. What advice would you give somebody, or maybe better, what are the challenges somebody might be facing should they apply to work in a company that's not Jewish or there's not a lot of Jews? What challenges would they face? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I guess my story is a little bit that the first few years I didn't wear my kippah at work, right? So, and then one day I decided to. But I think that I learned from that probably leaning into my Yiddishkeit was probably a good thing, in the sense that people were more accommodating. It was pretty clear. A lot of respect actually from that to some degree. So, so my personal, for me it was I would say lean into it. I think companies are very accommodative today. Very accommodative with food and accommodations and travel and things like that, than probably more so today, because especially executives at the high level, if you're valued and stuff like that, then you're a good worker and they're respectful of that. So I think it could be a good thing and opportunities for Kiddush Hashem, I think, within companies to potentially, sometimes being the only Jew there could be a very good thing for an organization and for yourself as well. I see it as a positive potential. And so I know there's apprehension from people. We mentioned on our call that sometimes people don't want to work at non-Jewish companies. And I would say that my experience was generally good. And so I would take the positive spin on it from that perspective, that yes, there's pros or cons, but I think the pros are fine. I think obviously it depends on the role, the opportunities, what you can learn there. And assuming it's the right appropriate industry and so forth, that works for your family and locational and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, just to add, there are a lot of, let's just talk about kosher meals for a minute. I was invited to a dinner with other executives from financial firms by Salesforce. There was a dinner down at the restaurant called Jump downtown. I looked at it and I said, there's no way there's kosher at this place. But if anybody's been out, and you can order these individual meals from Dr. Burke, and they were incredibly respectful. The restaurant was very accommodating, and it's not what it used to be. I think there's lots of options, not just to work within from businesses, but even to go out into other businesses as well. This next question is for Danny, and it's also about within your career, but maybe more from a business owner's perspective. We've seen within the last, let's say, 15 years, there's been these black swan events that will come out of nowhere, and you can't prepare for them. But the most successful businesses seem to just weather that storm. And the question is, maybe for an entrepreneur or a young or even an experienced business owner, what would you say are the most important things to protect your business from these black swan events?
So as I said, in starting up a business, one should plan for disruptions. They always happen. I think these, like you said, these black swan events are occurring more and more often. I think to get through them, what's most important is make sure that your business partners, your stakeholders, are people that you can trust and that they trust you. So full transparency, I think, is important. I'll tell you a couple of stories. A little anecdote is 2008. I went through quite a few of them, by the way, in my career. It's Y2K, 9/11, 2008, and I'm going to tell you one that came after that was unexpected, and it wasn't a black swan event, but it was an unintended consequence of a government policy. In 2008, we were exporters to the United States. In 2008, I had to sell US dollars. So typical thing, I would call the TD bank. I need to sell X dollars, get a rate, and book it. Well, I called this time. It was strange. He's not getting back to me. I'm on hold, and it's almost 5 minutes. I'm on hold. He comes back, and he says, Dan, just a minute, Dan, just a minute. This guy was a career FX person who had been in the business for, 35 years. He says, Dan, I can't find a counterparty that's going to take your trade. The whole banking system was frozen. And it was like, I shook my head. I said, what are we going to do? Like, this is terrible. Like, how are we going to get through this? But the TD was facing the same issues that we were facing. It was during the same time, I don't remember how long before or after, I walked into the office, and back then there were faxes. So on the fax machine, there must have been a stack this high. And I looked at it and I yelled out into the office. I said, hey, someone must be printing to the wrong device. Like I said, what's going on here? And I walked over and picked it up and it said canceled. And so as a business that trades in high dollar value with a low margin, we can't afford bad debt. So we insure our accounts receivable. Well, Euler was canceling policies. Our whole policy book was canceled, and they reissued at 50% of the 30 to 50% of the volume. So all of a sudden, we had to scramble to manage our business at 30 to 50% of the volume. And it was an issue of capital. We had a choice. We could sell uninsured and risk our capital, or we had to reduce our business. And so for the next 2 years, we worked on reducing the amount of it. It wasn't about profitability. It was about preservation of capital. And these events are continuously happening. So we got through 2008, and we said, okay, things are great now, let's expand. So we moved on, and we went to Atlanta. Well, I don't know if you guys remember, but the Obama administration put in a program called Cash for Clunkers. They wanted to get the polluting cars off the road. So they would pay $2,500 for any car you brought into an auto wrecker. The only caveat was we recycle aluminum rims. The deal was you got 20, the auto wrecker was not allowed to touch the car. That car had to be shredded as a whole car. So all of a sudden there was no supply of auto wheels for us. It was an unintended consequence, but it almost destroyed a whole industry, and it went on for 2 years. So how do you protect that? You can't. But these are government policies or black swan events. But if you're fully transparent, what I want to say, those are the anecdotes. What to do to help yourself get through them is full transparency. When I see something going on, pick up the phone. Don't be shy, and don't think that the bank doesn't know what's going on, because they know it all, and they will try. If you keep fully transparency with them, they will trust you and support you through it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is find partners that you can trust, and they will trust you. When the Euler American experience happened, we left them immediately and went to Export Development Canada. Export Development Canada has a mandate to support you. So they will work through with you through these type of events and support your business, rather than running because of profitability.
Those are great stories. We got 10 minutes left, and I think it would be great to open up to the floor. But before we do that, I just want to ask one more question for the whole panel. Knowing what you know now, if you had to go back in time and talk to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself? We'll start with you, Danny.
So I'm a very conservative guy. The advice I would give is I would have taken a little more risk, calculated risk. I'm a very conservative guy. I think I held back the company by being too overly conservative. I'll just give a little anecdote. When we went into Atlanta, we were financing the deal, and we built our model, and we thought we were honest, and X dollars was the capital we needed, so I took X dollars. Available to me was probably 2 times X. But I said, why do I need so much debt? I'll just take X, it'll work, it'll be good. Well, that Clash for Clunkers came 2-3 years later, and I had to sell 25% of the company for a very reduced price. So that 2 times X would have got me through the hard times. So if you can, take the cash when you get it, when it's available.
I don't remember who I was watching, but one of these successful entrepreneurs had said, when you're desperate for cash, that's
Nobody will
when
give it to you.
nobody wants to give you cash. It's when you don't need it that they're willing to give you a loan. So I guess what
Exactly.
you're saying is if they're offering it,
Just grab it.
just take it. Harley?
So I say, reading and communication skills are really important. So maybe working on those a little bit early on in my career probably would have been beneficial. So trying to read as much as you can, different business books, different things you can learn that you can try to use. I mean, also sales. I think sales is important in any role within an organization, external to an organization. So working on one's sales skills, that's also part of communication, I think is really valuable. And I think that a lot of the younger folks I see come up today haven't worked on those skills, given that they're behind a computer playing games. A lot of the time in the last few years, they haven't worked on how to write, how to communicate, how to follow up with an email, things of that nature, or even how to write a personal letter and things like that. So I think some of those skills, maybe I could have done that a little bit better, I would say.
Fantastic.
I would say listen to my father. He was an entrepreneur, and he had all these businesses running, and he's very successful, and he gave me opportunities to do so, and I fought against him. And I was like, I'm going to be an academic. I want to do education. But I look back now, and now I talk to my dad every day about business. We talk about what's going on, the deals that are going on, how are you looking ahead. And I've learned so much from him, but I wish I had gone back 15, 20 years from now. I would have listened to him a lot more. And I used to go on his business trips when I was a kid, but when I got into high school, I started I've had enough. I'm going to do my own thing. But that's what I would say is listen to, if you have any opportunities to be around people who run businesses, who are entrepreneurs, listen to them, go for coffee with them, spend time with them. The whole game, a major part of it is communication, being a good communicator, being a good listener, being proactive. And those are things you could learn from a good entrepreneur.
It's fantastic advice. Thank you all. Okay. I don't know if we have a microphone floating around, but just if you want to stand up, I'll try to repeat the question.
Stand right.
Whatever you want.
Given the cost of living, especially as a from family trying to have a house and a lot of kids and tuition, do you think it's possible these days to have a conventional career where you apply for a job, slowly get promoted, and go that kind of old school route, or you have to do something bigger to try to pay the bills here?
So just I'll repeat the question. The question is, with the cost of living in Toronto these days, is it wise, I guess, to just go the traditional route, a traditional career, or do you need to go extra, find something even more extraordinary? I don't know who wants to take that.
The advantage for working for a large company, growing within the companies, you're learning their own dime, right? So there's an advantage for a few years. If you want to go the entrepreneur direction, that's great, but there is something to be said of working for a medium-sized company or a larger company, learning a little bit, growing within that organization, and building the confidence level of what you're specifically looking to get into, because it's all about having confidence and expertise. And so that would be my advice, to kind of start there, and then if you want to do something on your own, you can do that. I mean, you can always do that. It's a lot harder if you just start out on your own day one. It's very hard to go back into the corporate world. There's questions. Why do you do that? It's much harder to go the other way. And so I would say start that way first.
Anybody want to add to that?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that what we've experienced over the last, you talk about doing something big in a grand slam. The last 15 years, the dynamics of the economy have allowed people to make tremendous amounts of money. When interest rates were at 0 or 1%, almost every deal worked. As interest rates have now recently climbed, that whole dynamic is shifting back to the way business was for many, many years, which is you're not going to make that grand slam every time. You're likely going to fail 2-3 times before you hit that grand slam. And so I just think you got to be aware right now that the dynamics of the economy are changing. So that big thing may not come, and then you're in a more difficult situation. But I'll go back to saying that I think what you're talking about, the cost of living and buying a house in Canada, in Toronto specifically, I think it's not only the from people that are facing this, I think it's the whole economy, the whole population, that professions will no longer support that American dream, the Canadian dream of house ownership, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we have it more difficult with our tuitions and everything else that we have to deal with, but that's what I would say.
I would say to that, I would say it's interesting. There are enterprise corporations out there, like Harley's saying, you could get involved with and you could go, there's a career path. And there are a lot in Toronto. There are a lot of different enterprise corporations. But there is also something to say for, you know, a lot of people are dual income families. So to make it by, you know, my wife works, I work. It's a lot of families do that today, and I think that it's important to do that. You know, if you don't already have that, definitely take that in mind. You know, if you can do it, if it's possible. The other thing is, you know, doing a lot of different side things. Like I do, you know, to get by here in Toronto, I run my company. I do a lot of different projects. I even work with my father in the leather business. I even do that on the side. I'm able to do it all. I'm able to manage my life. It's possible, and you could get by here. So you may have to take on a side gig, you know, in this kind of economy. If you don't want to work for an enterprise corporation, then you could do things on your own. You could develop your own company. There's a lot of different things you could do. And there are a lot of there's a lot of loans, there's a lot of opportunities, especially here within the Jewish community. A lot of people be happy to help you out if you were an entrepreneur and give mentorship and whatnot. So there is that. But it's a risk, you know, and when there's a risk, it's not just a risk for you, it's a risk for your family. And it's a risk for everybody else. So it's not so simple, especially in this type of economy. But I would say there's lots of different ways of doing it, but you definitely have, like, look at our grandparents. My great-grandparents taking on a lot of different jobs when they were immigrants to the United States, and they made their way up. You know, they became, you know, millionaires. You know, so you just have to keep it up, do what you can to support your family, even if it means taking on a few different jobs. But that's the way it is today, sadly.
Okay. Any other questions? We got one in the back.
For a side hustle, which you have less time to do since you have a regular job, would you go about it any differently than you would with a regular entrepreneur opportunity?
So the question was, if you were to take on a side hustle, how would you approach a side hustle? Would you treat it like starting your own business like an entrepreneur, or is there some other way to approach a side hustle? Who wants to take that one?
Well, it depends on how much income it could bring you, I guess. I mean, if it's a side hustle, it's a side hustle. It's something that should be done just to be done. But if you see there's potential there for growth, then it's more than a side hustle. I mean, so you have to ask yourself some questions. You have to assess it. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I guess if you want to transition the side hustle into an eventual business, you got to treat it as a business from the start and have that proper business plan and have everything that it takes to start you're just starting it as a smaller size business.
You gotta be a little bit careful though. I mean, I would say that if I had somebody that was doing a side hustle work for me, I'd have a problem with it. You know, so it depends what industry you're in and who you work for, and depends what the side hustle is. Someone who might be, you know, I don't know if they were an Uber driver in the off time or something like that, maybe I wouldn't know about it, that might be okay. But if they're trying to run a business on the side, it wouldn't work for my industry in the financial services industry or investment management, but so it sort of depends your industry.
True.
Outside business activities. That's what they call it in the financial services. You have to disclose it. Any other questions? All right. Well, I thank our panelists today. Thank you.